What's up, everybody? It's Oliver Peck here, and I would like to welcome you to Art 101 with Mr. Burgher. Today's episode is on old school Sailor Jerry traditional style tattooing. Rock on.
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Thank you, Mr. Peck, for the kind introduction, and welcome back, scholars, to another episode of Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher, a professional artist, master educator, attempting to bring you the best in art historical content. If you like it, hit something and show me that you do, or write me a message, whatever. Thanks, I appreciate it.
If the shit fits, where?
Now, this is not a typical Art 101 video. Typically, we're talking about painters, sculptors, fine artists, people that are in gallery-type settings. However, Sailor Jerry, Norman Collins, is an artist that, you cannot deny his artistic abilities, you cannot deny his artistic influence on others, and you cannot deny the fact that in today's culture, it is more and more popular, accepted to have tattoos and things like that. Back in the day, when I was growing up, my parents of a slightly older generation thought there was a stigma and a bad reputation that went with getting tattoos. And more it's been accepted where you have teachers and police officers and people of authority having sleeves and full body tattoo type designs and decorations on themselves to express themselves, and it's more accepted than it's ever been. And so the tattoo style, the traditional art of Sailor Jerry, Norman Collins, is the focus of today, to give you a little bit of a taste of the tattoo experience and the artistic influence of Sailor Jerry. Norman Collins, best known as Sailor Jerry, became one of the most influential tattoo artists of his or our modern generations. He grew up in Northern California and left home as a teenager, like many, to hitchhike and ride trains across the American countryside. Wanderlust of this counterculture very much piqued his interest and inspired the way he wanted to live, as well as began to introduce him to the people that he wanted to live around. Tattoos and tattoo artists were very much a part of that whole scene.
Now, I'm flattered that you remembered me.
He first began to learn with just a needle and whatever sort of ink he could find with a stick and poke type method. Eventually, he would encounter Tats Thomas, who was a tattoo artist from Chicago, who first began to train him with actual tattoo equipment. It's said that he would practice on transients and would pay them with alcohol or spare change. At the age of 19, he wanted to do something different with his life. He wanted a different sort of adventure, so he would join the United States Navy. He loved the sea and would eventually earn master's papers on most every type of vessel that they had at the time. After his run in the Navy, he would settle in Honolulu, Hawaii, and he would definitely notice a change in the state after the entry into World War II. Before the bombings at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii was kind of this rural type state, but then after entering World War II, with military personnel coming in and out, people off and on shore leave, Hawaii got really busy really fast. And for guys that went on shore leave in Hawaii, it got real crazy.
A little bit.
He would set up shop in one of the crazier neighborhoods that promoted everything that the off-duty military guy of that time would want. He was set up on Hotel Street in the area of Chinatown that was absolutely packed with bars, brothels, and tattoo shops. And again, that can't be expressed enough. And when these soldiers were on shore leave, they wanted to hit one or all three of these establishments. He had a small shop with only 2 stations, and the entire thing was packed with flash. Typically, when you walk into a tattoo shop, you'll see the flash on the walls. These are drawn designs on paper that are displayed to give patrons an idea of the type of designs that they might choose.
Some things just won't be organized, and we have to accept that now, don't we?
He took his work seriously and studied the art of the Japanese tattoo masters. He wouldn't work on somebody that had pieces of artwork tattooed on them that he didn't appreciate or from tattoo artists that he didn't like. He was known for his correspondence with other tattoo artists, sending them letters of advice, encouragement, whether that be their technical skills, their use of textures in their work, or to encourage them to get the heck out of the business. But Sailor Jerry was not one-dimensional. He was not just a tattoo artist. He loved hitting the road, getting out on his Harley or his yellow Thunderbird. He'd get his schooner out on the water and take tours of the islands. Also, he had his own radio show called Old Ironsides where he'd talk about all kinds of topics. He was a bit of a libertarian, and so he'd get on there and talk politics. He would read his own poetry and have discussions and topics about everything in between. Side note, on multiple occasions he would throw hippies out of his tattoo shop because he wanted no part of their counterculture, even though he had a similar belief of a small government system that stayed out of people's business.
I gotta barbecue your ass in molasses!
I think we're gonna tone down the language, right?
At any rate, he was also a pretty great musician, so they say. He would play saxophone in a jazz band, and so it's very much evident that between his tattoo work, his saxophone skills, and his poetry, that he pretty much had the run of the arts in his life.
I learned to do that at band camp.
Sailor Jerry very much created a hybrid between the Japanese style of tattoo and an American style of tattoo, creating this whole new Sailor Jerry style. He would also develop his own pigments of color, and so he would have colors in his tattoos that nobody else would have. He also developed needle formations to be able to pierce the skin with more ink, but creating less trauma and swelling to it, which allowed it to heal a little bit easier. And his shop is known as the first shop in the world to have the pristine standards for sterilization of all of the needles and equipment. Within the style, he would do all kinds of different types of things, from pinup girls, alcohol type symbols, dice and gambling type symbols, nautical symbols, swallows, eagles, other birds, military stuff of course, as well as weaponry, and much, much more beyond that.
This looks like a good place to help relieve some tension in this world.
One day while riding his Harley, he would have a heart attack. He would go into the hospital for a short period of time before passing away. One of the last things that he did on this earth was he wrote a letter to his good friend Paul Rogers, who's also a tattoo artist. And I don't know if he was really a superstitious sort of guy that believed in old wives' tales and hearsay medicinal things, but in that letter he would write to him that he was going to, quote, down some ground seahorse meat, pulverized rat shit, snake skin, lizard eggs, dried snails, and dried rat skin, and by go we'll see who is the best doctor in the end.
Are we being too literal?
Norman Sailor Jerry Collins is an artist whose influence went well beyond his days. After he passed away in 1973, the popularity of tattoo has really grown, and his old school flash type artwork are popular with lots and lots of folks that get their tattoos. Tell you what, I love that story. Thanks for clicking on the video.
If I don't talk to you, keep trucking, you know? Okay, good stuff.